Hola amigos, it's Kara, and I'm in Linden class again, getting things cleaned up and organized, and I came across a work I remember a lot of my friends really liking. Has to do with animals. Lots of different kinds of animals. We're going to look at these today and put them in categories to learn the different types of animals. So if you want to press pause or have your adult press pause and go through your house and see if you can collect some toy animals so that you can be thinking about their categories also. You can press pause now and come right back. All right, maybe you have some animals or maybe you're going to see what I have. First, we're going to look at the different categories of animals. Invertebrate. An invertebrate is an animal that has no backbone. Now, usually this means it has kind of a hard outer shell. Sometimes it's hard to see it, but that can be a clue for an invertebrate, an animal with no backbone. Now, you have a backbone. If you can feel behind you, right down the middle of your back, sometimes it helps if you lean forward. There's some bones back there. Those are your vertebrae, or your backbone. So you are a vertebrate. And some animals don't have any backbone. Let's see what other categories there are. Fish. I think you guys know fish. Now, fish do have a backbone. They also have gills, which helps them get oxygen from the water to breathe. They live in the water, and they are cold-blooded. Now, cold-blooded means that their body temperature is going to change depending on where they are. Our body temperature stays about the same, so we are called warm-blooded. Have you had your temperature taken? And if your temperature goes up too high, that's a sign that something's wrong in your body. Since we are warm-blooded, we want it to stay about 97, 98 degrees. And if it goes too high, we know our body's trying to fight an infection off. So that's a sign of being warm-blooded. Let's see. Amphibian. That's a funny word. You try saying it. Amphibian. Got it. Amphibians have vertebrae, so they have a backbone. They're also cold-blooded, meaning that their body temperature changes depending on where they are. They begin their life in the water, and they have smooth skin. Those are good clues for amphibians, beginning their life in the water and having smooth skin. Reptile. Reptiles also have vertebrae, so they have a backbone. They're also cold-blooded, and they have rough scales on their body. That's a good clue for reptiles, rough scales. The next one is bird. Have you been seeing some birds outside lately? You know what they are. Birds have vertebrae. They have beaks and they have feathers. Those are our clues for birds. Our last category is mammals. Mammals have warm blood. That means their body temperature should stay about the same. They have hair or fur on their body. They have milk for their young, and they have live birth. So they don't come out of eggs like many of the other animals do. These are mammals. So let's take a look at some of our animals. I'm going to see what I find first. A duck. I think you might already know what category the duck goes in, but let's look at our clues. Does a duck have a hard shell? No. Does a duck live in the water? Well, it does go in the water. Sometimes it doesn't stay in the water though, so it can't be a fish. An amphibian comes from eggs. It starts its life in the water. It has smooth skin. The duck doesn't have that smooth skin. A reptile has rough scales. Nope. A bird, feathers and a beak. That's where our duck goes. It is a bird. How about a snake? Did you find a snake at your house? All right, let's think of the snake. Does the snake have a hard shell like an invertebrate? No, it's hard to think of it having a backbone though, with it winding around. But I know, I've seen some skeletons and they have a backbone that can really wind around so they can move. Let's see. A fish comes from eggs. It lives in the water. Some snakes live in the water, but some don't, so it can't be a fish. An amphibian, it starts its life in the water. Not all snakes start their life in the water. Reptiles, they come from eggs, they have vertebrae, they're cold-blooded, and they have rough scales. I think the snake is a reptile. How about the polar bear? Let's see. Polar bear has a hard shell like an invertebrate? No. Lives in the water as a fish? No. It does swim really well, but it's not always in the water. Does it start its life in the water and have smooth skin like an amphibian? Nope. Rough scales like a reptile? Feathers like a bird? Fur or hair like a mammal? It does. It has live birth, milk for its young, and it is warm-blooded. It's a mammal. Polar bear is a mammal. A crab. Oh, now a crab has a hard shell. That's a big clue for me. Do you remember where they go usually? You're right, invertebrate. Now, not everything with the shell is an invertebrate, so let me think about this. The shell is going to protect it, so it doesn't have to have a backbone. It's also cold-blooded. It is. It's an invertebrate. I can't think of anything else that would put it in another category. How about the fish? It goes in the fish category. It has gills to get oxygen from the water. It spends its whole life in the water, cold-blooded. It goes in the fish category. Now here's a frog. Let's see. Frog does not have a hard shell. It does spend some time in the water, but I have seen older frogs out of the water, so it can't be a fish. Let's see. Amphibians start their life in the water. They have smooth skin. A frog must be an amphibian. I think I have all my categories out. Invertebrate, an example is a crab. Fish, an example of an amphibian is a frog. An example of a reptile is a snake. Example of a bird is a duck. Example of a mammal is a polar bear. Maybe we'll look at just a couple more, and you can be looking at your animals at home and be thinking about them. I have some tricky ones in here. Maybe you guys can help figure them out. A turtle. This is tricky because a turtle has a hard shell. However, if you think about its legs coming out, those parts have rough scales on them. I've also been able to see inside a turtle's shell, and I have seen a backbone inside of it. So, it can't be an invertebrate if it has a backbone, but it has those rough scales, so that's our next clue. Who knows? Rough scales, reptile, rough scales, reptile. It's in the same category as the snake. All right, are you ready for another tricky one? A dolphin. This is tricky because a dolphin lives in the water. It does. However, it's not a fish. Now, the way I know this is because the dolphin comes out of the water to breathe the air. It doesn't have gills to get the oxygen from the water. It gets oxygen from the air. Have you ever seen pictures of a dolphin jumping up out of the water? It gets a gulp of air then, and then can go back to swimming. I also know that the dolphin mamas have milk for their babies. They give live birth. So these clues tell us a dolphin is actually a mammal. Did you know that some mammals live in the water? Yeah, like dolphins. You guys are good at this. Should we do a couple more tricky ones? Penguin. This one's tricky too because it spends so much time in the water and it swims so well, but it does come out on the ice, so we know it's not a fish. Now here's some clues. There's a beak, and these are actually feathers. Where is it gonna go? You got it, it's a bird. A penguin is a bird. Two more tricky ones. This is a fly. Now, any kind of insect, even though you might not notice a hard shell on it, it's actually an invertebrate. The way its body is made up, it doesn't need a backbone. So, insects and this fly goes in the invertebrate category. All right, one more today. I have a person. Just like you and me. Let's see. We already felt our backbone, so we know we aren't invertebrate. Do you have any gills here? No, so we're not fish. Do you start your life in the water from an egg like an amphibian? Nope. Do you have rough scales on you like a reptile? No. Do you have a beak or feathers? No. Do you have hair? Yes. Are you warm-blooded? Your temperature stays about the same? Yes. People are mammals. We're animals that belong in the mammal category. All right. I want you guys to do this at home. See what kind of animals you can find and think about what category they're going to go into and why. You might come across some tricky ones like I did. Maybe you'll have even trickier ones at home. I'd be curious to hear about it. But I hope you have fun with this, and maybe you could write about it. After you make up your animals, you could put them together in a book, or perhaps you've seen one of these outside. I've been really watching the birds lately, so I'm going to be thinking about them a lot with their beaks and their feathers, and maybe I'll write about that in my nature journal. You know, I was thinking, if you can't get outside for a walk to do something for your nature journal, it's always really nice to go sit by a window. And then you can be a very quiet observer looking outside. And if you're a really quiet observer, you might see things that you wouldn't see if you were outside. So try it. Find a window in your house. You can take your nature journal next to the window and see what you can see. It'll be really fun. All right, until next time, I miss you guys.